All right, and we're recording all around. Today we're sitting with Mike Benson with Legacy Mortgage LLC in Hanover, New Hampshire. Mike, you're a loan processor with Legacy, correct?
Loan originator and
Loan
I do
originator
some processing.
and process.
I
Okay.
do both. Yep.
Great. And would you mind, so before we get into the interrogatory questions of who are you, would you mind explaining the difference between like a mortgage loan officer and what you do as an originator and a processor?
Yeah. I mean, so for originator, same exact thing as everybody else.
Okay.
So I do both roles at the same time.
Yep.
And one that shortens the learning curve a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So a loan processor, you're like the foot soldier. You're doing everything, right? So the loan officer, gets with the client, structures the loan, sends it off to processing.
Mm-hmm.
Processor then takes from there, establishes contact with the client, collects all the documents, tracks all the times, finance, contingency, closing, collaborates with the closing attorney, and just make sure everything's going smoothly, make sure the appraisal's coming in time, all that stuff, making sure the borrower is getting their documents in on time, making sure things are signed properly. So, and that frees up the loan officer to be able to go out, keep helping new clients, make sure that they're staying on top of all the new loan products, because it's a lot to do both.
Yep.
Like that's what I'm experiencing now is you're doing both. So I'm just kind of right in it.
Yep. Well, it's
water
great though.
right over your head, but it's the quickest way to learn.
Well, that's exactly what I did with Dale when I started in real estate. Was I dove in head first, and I mean, there wasn't looking back. There wasn't a job. I mean, I had a job for a period of time while I was learning some elements of real estate, but when I really committed and just went in, I mean, that's what you have to do. We joke it's a 8-day a week, 36-hour a day business, because there's that
18-hour day.
18-hour day. Well, we work 18 out of the 24, but I would say there's an extra 12 we squeeze in there in the real estate and the financing world, honestly. I mean, all the stuff that we're doing throughout the day. And so you've been with Legacy for how long now?
Almost 2 years now.
2 years now.
And that's a good thing about Legacy too is basically all of our loan officers know how to process a loan, which is not common for the majority of loan officers. It's not. Like a typical loan officer at a bank they know how to they know how to originate loans, they know how to structure it. Once it's gone after that, it's with processing. They don't see it typically. Yep. So at Legacy, we're sit right next to each other. Like I'm constantly being like, Jake, you got a problem on this loan. Like the appraisal came in, low or whatnot. And so like everybody at Legacy knows how to do all the jobs, which I think is super important. Helps you predict, things that are going to happen in the future. When you don't see what other people are doing on your team, it's much easier for you to miss stuff.
Yeah. Well, especially if those parties aren't involved at the moment in time. I mean, we are a Swiss Army knife type organization ourselves. I mean, I know that's something that Dale's very proud of and something that we offer to a lot of people, our ability to help in any number of situations. Are you planning on eventually transitioning to a mortgage loan officer in the future? Or?
Full time, yeah. Yep. I mean, it's a kind of more of a difficult market currently, just because the inventory is so low.
Of course.
So it's perfect because I'm able to originate my own loans, but then also support Rob and Jake with processing their loans.
Yep.
And it just makes things it's smooth the way it's going. And
that's great.
Luckily, I mean, we're doing just what we've done the past few years. So we aren't slowing down, and at least in Legacy, which is great.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of other lenders out there that aren't coping so well with what's going on.
As we're seeing in real estate, too. There's a lot of realtors that have kind of dropped off in recent, this is July 25th when we're recording this. And I mean, I would say in 2024, with the license renewals coming up, we'll most likely see a little bit of decline in the industry. People that are realizing that it's not as easy as it was in the past 36 months. So let's get into the interrogation. Who are you? Why are you here? No, just kidding.
Well, you texted me.
Yes, no, that's fair. I did invite you. So you're a local. You're like me. I mean, you grew up across the river in Haverhill.
Yep, I went to Woodsville Elementary School, Haverhill Cooperative Middle School, Woodsville High School. So I've been here since I was 5. So I've always been around this area. I'm one of the few who just didn't move away. I love it. I've never had issues with this area. I love this area.
You went to Plymouth?
Went to Plymouth State for a year for criminal justice. Decided, it was funny, I actually had a project I had to do where I had to interview a cop, and I had to be like, what's better, to have military experience or to have a college degree? And they're like, it's the same. So I was like, then why am I going to debt?
Sure.
So I finished that year, and then I went straight into the Marine Corps after that.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah.
And then from service, did that lead you into law enforcement, or was there a period of time in between?
So I was able to be in the Marine Corps Reserves.
Yep.
I actually wanted to be active duty, but those recruiters, they're liars.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
They are liars. So I wanted to go active. They told me I could. I had to start off reserves.
Sure.
Ended up being full reserves, which actually worked out because I was able to do all my normal training, Paris Island, come back, and then I was able to do the Marine Corps, and I started working at the Grafton County Jail at the same time.
Oh, wow. Yep.
Yep. So that was kind of because I was 19. At the time, you really had to be like 21 to be a cop.
Sure.
So I started at the jail. I was there from when I was 19 until 23. Trained people there. It was quite the experience.
Yeah.
I feel bad for anyone who has to do corrections. It's a tough job.
Yeah, no, that is. I mean, we know a number of people in the area that are employed by or have been employed by Grafton County. We also know a number of people that have been tenants of Grafton County for periods of time.
Local communities.
Yeah, I mean, well, we do.
Probably do.
Yeah, I was going to say, we know them off mic.
Yeah.
So then from Grafton County, did you go straight to Hanover PD at 21?
Nope. So until I was 23, I stayed at the jail. Just
23. Okay.
You kind of get sucked into it, and you're like, well, maybe I can make a career here, whatnot.
Sure.
I'm doing well, progressing. And when you're that young, you kind of feel stuck when you're at a job.
Sure.
And that was like 60-hour weeks. Just it was a lot. So eventually, I'm like, all right, I'm making the switch. So then I got the job at Hanover PD.
Yep.
And I was there for 5 years. Where I finished as a detective. That was much better. I remember my first time working there. I was like, wow, I get to like walk outside while I work.
Sure.
Because not being stuck in a jail. I get to go and get a meal because you don't get breaks.
Sure.
Jail. Like
Yeah,
whatever you're bringing to the unit is what you're eating.
Yeah, right.
I used to bring like a half gallon of chocolate milk, and I just drank it all day.
Was there a big African-American fellow there then when you were there in Hanover?
Not when I was there. He left before I got there.
He was so intimidating. This
Yeah.
guy was freaking huge.
Yeah, no, he's a nice guy.
Nice guy.
He's They used to have a ton of just ginormous police officers there. There was a couple of them, but
I'm pretty sure you got through training quickly if you were a certain size, because they're like, we just need you to muckle onto
just
people.
take these keys and drive the car.
Just pin people against the wall when we say pin.
Yeah.
Anything significant happen while you were a police officer? I mean, that's an industry that a lot of people probably fantasize about being in, but I know that the inner workings, probably similar to high-end hospitality, are not as glamorous as they look from the exterior.
I mean, you think of it as any shift work, right? There's times when things are exciting, but most of the time it's shift work. You're there when everyone else is sleeping.
Sure.
There's endless overtime. People call out. You can't leave.
Right.
You're dealing with people at the worst moments of their life, most of them, right? So it's very easy to get cynical because being exposed to that every day, it kind of changes the way. So you have to, it's tough. It's tough to stay sensitive. You have to really go out of your way because you're seeing it every day. So like this person to them, this is unique to them, but you've talked to 4 other people who maybe even had worse days than this person.
Right.
So it's very hard to stay in that mindset. I was able to do it, but it's, as you can see throughout the United States, it's difficult for police officers to stay sensitive, have empathy.
Yep.
Because you're just all day, just worst possible day for this person, worst possible day, and it's
some serious extremes.
Yeah, it takes a toll on you. You know? Stories, I mean, there's so many, they all blend together, right?
Sure.
I mean, to people, it's like, oh, you must have so many stories. And it's like, in my head, it's like the bar for stories for me is up here when everyone else's is here.
A lot of college kid instances.
Yeah. I mean, the college definitely keeps them busy just with underage drinking.
Sure, of course.
I mean, a lot of people think like Dartmouth Safety and Security is a police force. It's not. They're not police, so
I don't think they're even armed, are they?
No, they can't be.
Technically they can't. I mean, they can't touch people. They're just
right. If someone was actively destroying something,
they have the same rights as a citizen.
Right, you could intervene and do like a citizen's arrest.
They're a citizen.
Yeah.
So it's all up to the Hanover PD to deal with the college. there's just a lot. And you got the hospital right there, which is in Lebanon, but Lebanon and Hanover are always doing mutual aid between each other.
Sure.
And that's the way a lot of New England police departments is you're always helping each other out, because a lot of places are part-time, right? So at nighttime, maybe one town will cover for them, and you're always kind of responding because they're all understaffed too.
Right.
You don't have 200 officers that you can just call.
It's like the fire department's mutual aid.
100%. It's just like that.
You could need them in the future. So, of course, you're kicking up whenever they ask for you. Yeah. I imagine that level of relationship building, is that something that you were able to utilize when you started your new venture into the finance sector?
100%. I mean, I was used to people having these types of problems to these types of problems.
Yeah, finance problems compared
They're problems, but no one's dying,
Yeah, right. As long as you still have a roof over your head and your health and safety is not in question.
Exactly.
There's a little bit lower stake. Still some risk, of course, associated with what we do.
And you can stay sensitive on that stuff, but you can find a way through it. If it's the right team with the people putting in enough work, you can figure it out, most of the time. And if not, no one's going to be able to figure it. Like at Legacy, if we can't figure it out, there's a good chance no one's going to.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
What was the main bridge between Hanover PD and Legacy, or what was the timeline between that career change, or of that career change?
Yeah. So my daughter was born in August of 2019, and that's when police became a lot harder for me.
Yeah.
One, just because when you don't have kids, it's very easy to separate yourself from stuff, because you don't have that. It's just a whole different bonding connection. Of course. So you don't think about that. And then once you have a kid, then when you're responding to stuff, you're like, what if that was my kid? You start thinking about all that stuff, and it makes things harder. It makes it harder to put that emotional wall up.
Yeah, of course.
So there's that. And then just 2020 happened, right?
Yeah,
so you had two things happen at the same time. George Floyd.
Yes.
COVID.
Yeah.
Happened at the same time. Horrible for law enforcement.
Of course.
Horrible for any shift where COVID was.
Yes.
So those two things caused a mass exodus from all law enforcement agencies across the entire United States. Horrendous. Everyone. So I was in detectives at the time, and I was having to do detectives and the night shift at the same time on patrol. So I'm managing my caseload. I'm on night shift. I'm looking at my camera in my daughter's room, watching her cry for me at night. And I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not. Because originally I did it, one, to help people, but two, I'm very retire early financial mindset.
Yeah.
So the pension, I'm like, I just got to do this many years. And once I had a kid, I'm like, if I do that many years, each one of those years, I'm not home that much.
Of course.
So then it became much less worth it. So that's when I started kind of looking at other careers. And my first time I was able to sit back and be like, what do I want to do? And my wife was the main reason for that, because I went home and I'm like, I cannot do this. I'm like, I am never home. I'm never seeing my daughter Gracie. This is horrible. I don't want to do this. And she's like, then quit. I was like, I can just quit. I didn't know that was a thing. Yeah. So then I looked at every job. I sat down for months and I said, being a loan originator is what I want to do. So I took the certifications. I took everything I had to. I took the test. I passed it. And then I just started interviewing with everybody I could, because there was no loan officer positions at the time.
Really?
Sure.
Yeah, none. So I just reached out, and I was me, and especially in a rural area, it's harder to find a position like that.
Yeah, right.
Because they'll post the job, and it's like, new loan officer position, 2 years experience. It's like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Right. When you set the rung at previous standing experience, it's not.
So I just started interviewing people who didn't have open positions, and that's how I found Rob and Jess. And they were willing to meet with me, and we just clicked.
That's awesome.
It was great. It was just perfect, and now it's so much better.
So you didn't start with title, right?
No.
You started
with Legacy Mortgage. Yep.
That's awesome, and that's great that you were able to find a fit like that by also pounding the pavement.
That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Times are tough. You just gotta. Yeah. If you brute force it enough.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, and that's where, it's kind of aggressive to say, but we're dragging a lot of closings across the finish line, kicking and screaming, because there's just so much stuff that's happening in the financial element.
People do not realize what happens behind the scenes.
No. And that's why, so looking at, speaking with you and discussing your experience, I think I've been so fortunate to be friends with you and to have you be a resource. We've Also, I mean, in the time that you and I have been doing this business, we've seen a crazier market than has ever existed before. Dale and I were just discussing this about how this is one of the craziest markets that's existed in a long time, with the exception of, pre-2008 when real estate was somewhat no holds barred. Have you picked up any crazy happenstances or any viewpoints that you find would be valuable, or anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at this from 2020 is there's always those people who are just waiting for home prices to come down.
Sure, waiting for the drops.
It's like they're waiting for the drop. They're waiting for the drop.
Sure.
And you can't justify that home prices are going to come down just because they've gone up. And I think that that's a mindset that a lot of people have, because it makes sense. If something goes up, it's bound to come back down. And it's the same thing with like stocks, individual stocks. But people need to know that just because something goes up does not mean it needs to come down. There needs to be other variables. It can't just be because it went up.
Right.
So you see people from 2020, the whole year, they're like, it's going to come crashing.
Mm-hmm.
And 2021, even more certain, it's going to come crashing.
Sure. Nothing.
2022.
Even more.
And now we're in 2023, and they have still not come down.
They've chewed their fingers down to stumps because there's no nails left.
In some places, right? Cities, they're getting hit more. But in our area, nothing. They're still going up. And so when I talk to people, I'm like, if you find a home that you really love and you can afford the payment, and that you're very serious about it, then buy it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Right.
Because let's say the market does drop after you buy it. You love the house. What's the issue?
Right, exactly.
You have the house that you love. When rates come back down, you can refinance. But if you wait for home prices to come down, well, guess what everybody else is doing?
Waiting.
Right?
Yeah.
Now home prices come down, and let's say mortgage rates happen to come down too. You think home prices are going to stay down? No
chance.
There's, and it's as simple as and you guys know this, and a lot of people, if there's more buyers than there are sellers, there is no reason for prices to come down.
Right. And
we have buyers stacked up from 2020 still.
Yeah.
So many. Every year there's more buyers that are stacked up with the same mindset. The same. They all say the same thing, and we all talk to them. Yeah. They say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you couple that with the area that we're in, and what a lovely area we have, Upper Valley, whatever, it just adds to that.
Yeah. There's no reason. There's no reason for it to come down.
No, the only thing, so we've been using the buzzword appropriate when discussing value, because we also have to consider that there very well may be a lender involved, somebody that's going to have an appraisal done, and there's going to be comparables pulled, and there are plenty of properties out there that we know will not comp. I mean, it's just what it is. They're not necessarily listings that we have. There's maybe a few situations that we're a little skeptical as to appraisals and the values of the asking price and such. But outside of that, I mean, we've really been touting that appropriate value sells properties, and it's what moves.
And we see that on our end too, because we hear a lot from people. They'll say like, "Hey, the realtor didn't want to post our house or list it for how much we wanted to sell it." And I'm like, well, they're not just pulling that number out of nowhere. They're looking at the same comps that the appraisers are going to use. They're not trying to screw you. They want you to get the most money that you can.
If it would sell for $1 million, we'd love to see it sell for $1 million in every situation.
And there's strategies to that, right? I mean, if you overprice it, what does every person think when they look at a listing and it has a $50K price drop? They're like, what's wrong with this place? Yeah. First thing, it's all psychology, and that's what you guys are trying to avoid.
Yeah.
So it must be a really tough conversation to have on a daily basis with people when they want to list it, because that's their place where they maybe grew up.
Right. And I wanted to just point out too, so Mike was actually on the buy side of one of our listings, the house that we sold for Mark D. Johnson in Bradford on North Pleasant Street. You were
that was a nice place.
Yeah. And those are some really nice buyers. I just wanted to touch on that, not to call out those people or to like point any spotlight at them, but to point an example, to point the spotlight at an example of a nice house that we knew had reasonable value, that then a reasonable couple came along, found, put an offer on. The transaction went relatively smoothly. I mean, it's actually a rare case study lately because there's been so many transactions when there's so much that goes wrong. I mean, at every curve, there's just a hurdle, a situation that needs to be resolved. You wanted something to be A, it's actually B. I think that it's so important to have good-natured and well-tempered people on both sides of the transaction, including the loan officers and the people involved with the financing in a situation. And I'm very happy to say that that's something that you've been. I mean, clearly seeing you on the other side of that transaction too, we are offered a unique example as professionals to work with each other in multiple capacities to really get a full picture of how that person behaves, which I think is important to highlight because that's what we're trying to do with this little sit down and chat we're having, is we're working on keeping the industry better, keeping the industry standards rising, and also highlighting the fact that the people that are successful and that are worth listening to are the ones that are being friendly, being amicable, and also working with people on tough situations. You know, not just putting your hands in the air and saying it's not my job. Well, tough. Yeah. It is our job.
That's something Mike touched on, was that the problems that he's dealt with in the past in police work none of the problems today compare. We'll get through those today, and that's the way we look at it. You know, I've dealt with so many situations over the last 40 years, I guess.
Yeah,
like
40 years,
nothing's new to me. I can handle that. I'll get that fixed for you.
Yeah.
And it is, and it's just, it takes a team that wants to work together.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can be tough because it's very easy to get sucked into finger pointing when you have clients.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be the one who looks bad.
No
one needs a finger point. It's very easy to work together.
Yeah,
to
it's
come
all the
up
same
with solutions. Things are going to happen. We all know things are going to happen, so no one should be surprised and flustered when it does. Like, hey, this came up on the appraisal. Let's figure a way to fix it. Right? Don't finger point at the appraiser. Like, let's figure out a way to fix it.
Right.
It is what it is.
Yeah. We can only deal with what we've been handed. I think that's something that's been a real reinforcing point of conversation with sellers and buyers alike, is that reports from qualified professionals will most likely look the same from other qualified professionals. And to take that as a serious statement, because there's a lot of people that are like, oh, well, this person just had this issue this day. I don't think that we can realistically say that that's ever been the case. We've had maybe one or two appraisals where, remember that one instance where that gentleman was kind of roostering around with the three older ladies in Newbury? Remember, it was the first time we were selling a house in Newbury, Vermont, that we've sold a couple times. And there was an appraiser that came with the lady that had it under contract initially. And he was like bolstering up all the issues because he was basically an older gentleman with three older ladies. And he was making a show of it. And I remember that instance specifically because it was a very nice house. There was nothing materially wrong with this house. It had some soft spots. It still has some soft spots today because we've been involved with the property a couple times through its timeline since I became involved in real estate. And that is one of the few examples where it was actually somebody specifically tanked a deal for us. And it was that instance specifically that resulted in it was not an appraiser, I'm sorry, it was a home inspector. But either way, I mean, that professional terminated a deal for us, be it an appraiser or an inspector. There still was a professional that came to a property and then presented a picture of that property to somebody who was interested in buying it originally. That's
a good point. But now we tend to deal with home inspectors who say to the buyer, there's a problem over here with this powder post or whatever, but you can fix that. That's not beyond the realm of, instead of just throwing them into a panic and saying powder post, I can't handle that.
Right, an alarmist.
Yeah.
Working with people who aren't alarmists is very important.
Yeah. And the other thing is, just because things are always changing, obviously. Underwriting guidelines are changing. Appraisal, the way they're supposed to do their reports is changing. And I find a lot of people, just because this problem wasn't an issue on this deal, it could totally be an issue on this deal. And that's what makes getting people pre-qualified so complicated is things are changing all the time. It flew across this time because the appraiser put, some decent stuff in the report, but they're totally viable that the next appraiser could put some stuff in there, and then no one can predict it.
Right.
And a lot of people want certainty. They're like, I want to know this manufactured home will be financeable. And it's like, you can't know that for sure until the appraisal's done.
You can't know until you know.
And people want certainty, and unfortunately in real estate, there's so
lot of
many
us.
hidden things.
Not a lot of certainty.
Well, it'll put your stomach in knots. I mean, not to speak negatively of the profession, but I mean, there's been a number of situations this past year where, something is crucial. A deal hinges on something, and then it's a 50-50 of how it'll play out. And up until that moment in time when you get the result and you're either relieved or then you have to deal with the next leg of the bad timeline that's come up. It's always high stakes. I know, and I'm happy to hear that you look at your time in law enforcement as something where you did set a threshold pretty high for the extremes that you can witness. But I must say, I mean, there must be situations that still eat at you and things that still drive you nuts.
Yeah, when when something comes up and all of a sudden someone doesn't qualify anymore, whether if it's because usually. If it's legacy, it's usually something that they did that they shouldn't have done. New car. Maybe
job.
They didn't disclose something at the beginning that was very material, whatever. Sure. And that's not a good feeling. We don't want to let you guys down. We don't want to let anyone down. And in the end, it's not like we caused the problem, but we still feel responsible for trying to resolve it.
You did what? You bought a $60,000 truck yesterday?
Right? Now, maybe your realtor's going to think, I should have told you more about this, or whatever. But
I should have told you not to do it. But you don't think.
Yeah.
Because it's normal for us. We know not to buy a $60,000 car when your debt to income ratio is razor thin.
Right, exactly. That Audi's going to sink the ship. We've been fortunate to dodge a number of those bullets. We've had a lot more of the just the stuff being left behind and stuff in properties. That's really been kind of the word of the day. We've dodged a lot of bullets with sticky situations, and because in a lot of situations we're still having inspections performed, we're still having the proper evaluations done. Is that something that you are seeing with a lot of your buyers, that they're waiving inspections, that they're...
Not as much as like 2020, 21, and 2022. We're seeing a little more inspections, which is good. I mean, I think that's like a lot of lawsuits waiting to happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's just, even for the seller, like for me as a seller, I would sleep better at night knowing they hired someone to inspect the property and they saw everything they needed to. Because now it's off me. If something comes up, hey, you had your inspector search this place.
I've always been an advocate of pre-inspections, but we don't do a lot of that.
No.
A lot of realtors don't do it because the market is such now, it's turning so quickly. There's no time to get a hold of an inspector and have them do a pre-inspection. I wish there were more sellers. I wish we would advise more sellers to do that.
And I think a lot of sellers don't know that. They don't know how liable they could be if they didn't disclose something that was very obvious. And I think probably a lot of newer agents who entered the market probably didn't know either.
No.
So they probably didn't tell anybody that.
Something that Dale taught me was the visual inspection before determining final value of a property is so crucial. That also gives us the opportunity to find any serious defects, any visual, maybe something that's malignant but could be an issue. I mean, there's a lot of those situations in older properties especially. Just thinking out loud, the thing that would put pre-inspections into the fold again would be getting some inspectors that would be willing to take the payment from the proceeds of the sale. We're seeing a lot of sellers that are not necessarily cash flush as they're going into the instance of selling a property. So in theory, if we wanted to get pre-inspections back in fashion to anybody listening to this that maybe is a home inspector, you could start offering the pre-inspection and just take payment at closing.
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, you're delaying when you receive your payment, but it could be a way to secure that inspection ahead of the transaction because the buyer's agent, as you see on your side, Mike, the buyer's agent and the buyers are the ones that are truly dictating what inspectors are getting business. 100%. We as listing agents can recommend who we like, but that's about all the sway we have.
Yep.
I like this guy an awful lot. Please use him. And they can say yay or nay.
Yeah. No, that's been a scary thing it's scary to buy a house without inspecting it. I mean, you could go in there and that septic could just go the next day.
I did it. I mean, I bought our house in 2021 because we were in a situation where we really just needed to be out of a rental situation that I waived inspections just to say, hey, we want this house. We will buy this house. And I do remember having the inspector come through after we closed and then having the septic inspection performed. It was a pretty taxing experience, but luckily everything worked out in our favor. I mean, if anything, we actually got some good news about the electrical system in the home, and the septic was deemed to be in pretty decent shape. But
that's the shoemaker's kid with no shoes. That's I've been through that.
Yeah.
Can you speak to your horror stories of inspections, Dale? You have a number of them.
Oh my gosh. I bet they're nuts.
I just
Well, I'm at the age now where I don't remember a lot of them, which is probably a good thing.
yeah, I know you've forgotten them or blocked them out.
You just brought to mind, I bought a lovely home back in 2004 in Newbury, and I bought it from a friend who was still a friend. And I said, ever any water in the basement? Oh, she said, never had a drop of water. Well, my stepdaughter was staying with us at the time, and she came rushing into the bedroom one morning, and she said, Mom, there's water pouring into the basement. It's just pouring in. And what had happened, the patio was graded toward the basement, so rain was a hard rain like we've had the last few. God knows what it would do if we had rain then like we have now. But so I had to put a whole new $7,000 drainage system in the basement. But, I didn't complain about it. It was me. It was my fault.
Yeah.
I didn't have it inspected. So I did it. I just, dodged the bullet and got it taken care of.
People don't have that mentality anymore.
No,
though.
they don't.
We've run into so many instances where somebody is almost expecting that they're getting a brand new house.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's going to be something slightly askew because it's from 1980.
Even with a brand new home.
Yeah, even with a brand new home, there are still, we had that one in Bath, New Hampshire that was a new build that the buyers unfortunately picked apart a fair amount after the fact. But they didn't do any inspections. Yeah. They just moved in. Yeah. And it was a really sweet story. This couple that purchased a home to put their child in the school district that has like a high reputation for care of people with special needs. So that's very sweet. Unfortunately, not only was that a situation where I first learned the extent of possessions people will leave behind in a home as I took 4 or 5 trailers back and forth from that property, I also learned that the buyers arrived and were very dissatisfied with the make of the property. So it turned into a whole thing. But again, in real estate, we just persevere, make our way through. And luckily, those people are still, we're relatively close, I would say, people that I would call associates, not, someone who despises me.
But that brings me up to another point is probably on a weekly basis, I have a conversation with someone who wants to drain all the money they have to buy a house. And I'm like, you're free to do that if you want. But it is not a good idea. It's just not. Yeah. The amount of money that you spend that is hidden with a house it can be insane, and it comes in 3s, 4s. It never happens just one thing ever. No, many things will go wrong at the same time, and you need to have some sort of safety net. You need it, but in the end of the day, if they qualify and they want to do that, they can, and it's just and it's tough. It's tough. People, wages aren't the greatest for a lot of people. Inflation is just destroying their savings. I get it, but you can't put yourself in that position.
No, I've always been frustrated with situations where I see somebody entering a buying position and they don't have any cash on hand. If they're waiving earnest money deposit, if they are also doing 100% financing in a strange loan type. I just don't understand how somebody could just in good faith walk somebody off a cliff. It's really what you're doing. If you're looking at, the fact that you're entering into home payment, into home ownership, and you don't have any money to put into home maintenance, that's where we see the foreclosure inventory or the stuff that needs serious rehabilitation.
Yeah.
You are a homeowner.
Yep.
Have you been fortunate to dodge?
Oh, no. I've had issues left and right.
You can tell I don't even have to fully ask the question.
Yeah.
What have you had to deal with on your own front? As far as, something that, because it must be also incredible. I find being a homeowner is incredibly valuable as a realtor. I imagine in your position it's very similar.
Yeah. I am the least mechanical savvy person ever. I can't fix anything. Nothing. I can't. My wife will tell you, I cannot do anything.
Okay.
I can't.
Good to know. I'm not calling you if I'm on the side of the road.
Do not call me. If it's like you need me to do one thing repetitive, I can do that.
Sure. Pick me up.
But you want me to build something, I'll try. It's not happening. You're not going to want to use it. But like my house, like garage door breaks.
Yep.
Right. How much a garage door costs? Like $1,800.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. Right. So there's that. Well, just needs to be pulled up so that they can fix a tiny wire.
Yeah.
$1,900.
$2,000. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Septic pump.
Yeah.
Right. Another $2,000. Right.
Yeah. Wow.
I have a apartment above. It's an unfinished apartment above my garage, and there's a deck leading up to it.
Yeah.
the thing just slid off a little bit. So now now I can't even get up there.
Oh,
and now I need that fixed. No clue how much that's going to cost, right?
Yeah.
So things just happen.
Yeah.
They're going to happen.
I'll give you my contractor.
I'm going to need them.
I will.
Darren discount.
Well, they
that-
charge more because they're
that's,
like, Darren's going to jabber on the phone when we talk.
I've been in my house for 19 years now, and it's constant. It's constant. It will always go on.
You need a safety net.
This past year was a new furnace, which was $16,000.
Yeah.
And, so those kind of things. But I always look toward the fact that I'm increasing the value of the home at which time it comes time to market it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
it all
it-
pays off.
And it helps when it's appreciated since you bought it.
Yes.
If
Your
I was
address.
in a position,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you, by the way.
Yeah,
for
we've
selling
sold
lots of homes on my road.
We've sold 2 homes on his road. He's on Aaron Road in Piermont. We sold 2 homes on his road in Piermont. That's just bringing the value up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You are
Much
very
appreciated.
You're very welcome.
That's a very good. That's a good barometer of what goes on, and that market up there has just been crazy. 20 years ago, not so much.
Yeah, it's growing up there, and it's a nice neighborhood.
People like that little community.
Yeah.
People like that community feel too. They like having a few neighbors, but not too many neighbors.
Now you can work remotely, and I think that's it's the big push for why we're having so many more people move to this area. Is they can keep their high salaries that they have in California or whatever, but they can live in New Hampshire. But speaking of people not having a lot of money, if you don't have money and you buy a house now, and let's say the market does pull back, you're not going to feel good knowing you bought the house for $400. Maybe it's $390 now, just because of the market fluctuations, and you have no money in your account as a safety net, and you have something go wrong.
Yeah,
that's too much stress to put on yourself.
And financial stress is a killer. It's a killer of relationships. It's a killer of health.
Money matters.
Yeah,
people say it doesn't. It does, unfortunately.
Yeah,
it does. I have like these pieces of your health, fitness, mental. Financial is right up there with all of them. It leaks into everything.
In our first episode with our regional manager at Four Seasons, Ben Cushing, I said that it's somewhat soulless, but the good realtors are the ones that really focus on the dollar. I mean, it's something that you almost have to worship and pay very close attention to on a daily basis. Otherwise, it can slip out of control very quickly, especially if you are an individual that has a household you upkeep, if you're the primary breadwinner in any situation. I mean, there's a lot of instances where financial mistakes can have serious ramifications. So, and I think that it's also because it's something we care about. Home ownership and having a home and a dwelling is very much an investment in your personal life, as well as it is an investment in real estate. Do you have plans for your apartment, or is it something that you're just kind of developing or was in place before you bought the home?
We've thought about it. It's just having someone live on my property, it can go great and it could go really wrong.
Yeah,
I know this landlord who just had to move a hoarder out of theirs. And when there's a hoarder, you're helping them move the stuff. They're not doing
moving.
it.
You're not getting much for help.
Yeah, and it's like you think about that, and there's always cons to it. There's
of course.
Obviously pros to having rental. It could help pay for my mortgage and stuff, but I'm still kind of. My wife wants it, but I'm still kind of weighing. Just the freedom. It's my property. Do I want someone living on there? Do I want someone waiting for me to snow blow the driveway or whatever, other than my wife?
And it's a lot of responsibility. And unfortunately, it's something that we need, but it also needs to be made more accessible to the mass public. I mean, the accessory dwelling unit conversation is pretty prevalent in Vermont, especially, but it's also very difficult to find individuals that have the capital to do that type of renovation to their property as well. I mean, not every property is just set up to have an additional occupant somewhere.
No, because you got to think about other stuff like the well. Is the well okay to do that added push? Is the septic okay?
I mean, because you can always re-drill a well. A septic system costing between $10,000 and $30,000 to upgrade or repair or replace. I mean, that's a very large figure that the majority does not have access to those funds.
And no tenant cares what they put in their toilet.
No,
they don't. They will not, because it's not their septic. It's understandable. I've been there.
Yeah.
When I was, you don't, because you've never had a septic. You don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't care.
Yeah, having been a landlord, I would advise against it.
Yeah,
at
no,
all
no,
costs.
I know.
Tell
And
the
sure.
wife when I go home.
And a lot of, send her to this episode. And no, but a lot of landlords do. I mean, you've had a lot of honest conversations with a few local landlords about the margins and the stress entailed. I mean, there do seem to be better avenues, at least in this part of the country, other than real estate and rental income, as far as turning money into more money, which is kind of the whole goal of the day-to-day.
And with the tenant, I'm kind of a neatnik, and if the guy doesn't park right or he doesn't, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, no, especially not up at your current property.
No.
I know that's just so. We spend a fair amount of time manicuring Dale's yard.
Like this weekend.
Yeah.
You want to go home and relax. You don't want to go home and see a
I know.
unevenly parked vehicle.
Yeah. His wheels are crooked. Come on.
I know. My wife is a real stickler about that. The wheels being straightened out when you park. I'm like, why? I'm turning back out the way I turned in most of the time. I just want to.
This is a representation of us.
I know. Yeah, and then she's crying. No, I'm just kidding. We've been so fortunate to be able to develop this sphere of great professionals around us, and you're one of them. And I'm very happy that we're also able to use this medium to kind of collect these individuals we work with and are fortunate to share a lot of likeness with, and also a lot of good stories. I think it's great to also have people in the financial sector working with us realtors to keep everybody on the same page, because that's something that I'm almost kind of surprised at how it doesn't feel like that was always the case. There's always been kind of a veil between the banker and the realtor, and we're just like peeking through and getting our hands slapped. You know what I mean? Like it's very, I mean, especially with, I'm somewhat surprised we're not furnished appraisals when they come in. I'm somewhat surprised that we don't get a lot of the same information. We actually get it from our buyers more often than not. Is that something that you have an observation on, or a reason?
Yeah. So I'm biased just because I've only known Legacy.
Sure.
And a mortgage broker is much more in tune to what you're saying. A mortgage broker is much more about working with the realtor, working with everybody, being there nonstop, 24 hours a day. Because we're straight commission. We don't, we're not a bank. We don't collect a salary. We eat what we kill.
Yeah.
So
and if we all ate a little more roadkill, it would reduce our carbon footprint by 25%. And I'm highlighting the word more in the request to eat roadkill. No, I'm sorry. But no, for real. But we eat what we kill, and it's the same in real estate. We're commission based.
And I think it's important for everyone to be informed, but at the same time, at least from the lending standpoint, is we're weighing what the buyer wants us to disclose, right? Because there is that fine line.
Right.
The appraisal belongs to the lender, and the borrower gets, they get a copy of it. They then can give it to the realtor if they want to. It's not for us though to give. It's not. Sure. It's not. It's really not even my property. It's not for me to do. So that's where you see that. But I mean, with everything else, there's no reason the buyer's agent shouldn't be involved. I love when the buyer's agent's involved. Yeah. As long as they're involved appropriately, right? They want to work together. Right. I know your finance date, and I want to make it just as much as you do. I do not want to miss that ever. It's like So it's good. I don't know. I would never know how to operate where I would have a wall up. I couldn't do that.
No, that's fair. Yeah, and that's probably to your benefit too. I mean,
it makes deals close. When there's a wall, it's just communication is what kills deals. A wall destroys communication.
I've had loan officers in the past say that they feel like they're acting as the realtor, which is kind of a tough thing to hear, because it makes you feel for that loan officer, because it's very far away from the responsibilities of a loan officer to be acting almost as a real estate agent and to be working with addendums and various elements of like contractual pieces of a transaction. Have you seen much of that? Is that something that
it
you're
usually
aware
goes to the personality of the loan officer, right? Because like Jake and me and Rob, we're micromanagers. We want the deal to close. We want to know everything is good. And so, they feel like the realtor, but it's their own doing. They're getting involved too much because they can't help themselves, which can be good as long as you're not overstepping. But I do believe it's important for everybody on that real estate team, the attorney, the realtor, everyone needs to know what their lane is. And there's times where maybe you can assist in other people's lanes. But like if an attorney is stepping too far or whatever, it's important that everyone manages their responsibilities, and that's how things go smoothly. When people start not managing their responsibilities and others have to pick up who it's not their normal responsibility.
Yep.
Once again, that's a time where things start to get messed up.
Yeah. Start to get a little dicey.
That brings something to mind. Do we have time?
Yeah,
here?
of course we do. Yeah, absolutely.
I could never get an attorney to go visit a property with me. Over the years, I've probably had one or two attorneys would go, and I said, you should come and take a look at this. There could be issues here that we should talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether mortgage, do you ever go out and look at a property?
Unless it's an open house.
I was gonna say you do open houses.
Yeah, but I mean, we send out a lot of prequals. I mean, think about every single one you guys know you have to go to the property with them every single time.
Yeah.
The time it would take us to do that would take away from other things where we wouldn't be efficient. And that's the whole reason why we have all these people with all these duties is to make us most efficient.
Yeah.
It'd be likely for you to more meet with the buyers after they've been to a property that they're very interested in.
And talk to the agent and be like, what did you notice? Do you have anything that you're concerned about?
Yeah.
Because I always look at the pictures in the listing as closely as I can.
Right.
That's whatever the listing agent wants to show you. Obviously, things could be missing.
Of course.
So I always, my first question is to the, if someone wants to go FHA, VA, I say, hey, is there anything that concerns you with the property?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any chipping paint? Is there any railings missing?
Yeah, how many railings are we
How does the roof
up?
look, right? From your experience, would you sell this place? Yeah. Would you accept an FHA offer?
Right.
And if they say yes, then I'm like, hey,
great.
Then we'll just figure it out if any obstacles come up.
Yep. Yeah. No, and I think that it's something that could develop in the future, but I would think it's more likely that the loan officers taking part in the open houses will be the trend that we see stick around, because that's likely for the instance where somebody comes who's unrepresented, and then they can start the conversation with you, and then at least they have you in their court before they're submitting an offer, because we do work regularly with customers. Yeah. We don't always have the other side of a transaction be buyer represented. And so to have you in place to then at least give this person guidance to a point where they feel comfortable. Some people just don't like, maybe they come from a place where buyer's agents aren't a thing, or they're just not of a school of thought where, why am I working with this person? I'd rather just work with the listing agent. That balance is something we work on every day to make sure everybody feels represented. I think we've reached a great stopping point. We're about to do this again with our buddy Jake. So I will cut us off here. Thank you again for coming in today, Mike, and sitting down with us and sharing your experience. And now that we have an idea of who you are, we can just tell stories moving forward.
Love it. Thank you
we'll definitely have you back.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, bud.
Good to have you here.
All right, we're free.
It's painless, man. Yeah, that's the thing, is that they're painless.